Welcome to the WVU Football Sports Chat. I'm Todd Murray, along with our WVU football writer, Joey LoMonaco. Joey, the Mountaineers coming off a 62-38 loss at number 2 Baylor. That's their third straight defeat, dropping them to 3-3. The natives are kind of restless. Let's admit that right now. They don't take too well.
That's putting it nicely.
Losing 3 in a row, and a lot of them are down on this team right now. What are the realistic expectations for this team right now?
Well, obviously the Mountaineers expected to be 3-0 in the month of October inside, coach speak and player speak. I mean, they're not going to admit that these were games that on paper they probably weren't going to win. But if you look at the matchups, all ranked teams, they played Oklahoma when Oklahoma was number 15. They played Oklahoma State when the Cowboys were number 21 in the country. And then the Bears, as you mentioned, were the second ranked team in the FBS. So going into those games, you couldn't have expected surefire victories. And they've got one more coming up on Thursday, October 29th in Fort Worth. They could conceivably be 0 for October, lose all 4 games during this month, and still not be a bad team. And I think that's what people need to realize. They may not be, and they aren't to this point, an upper echelon Big 12 team, but they could be middle of the pack. They could conceivably still have an 8-win season.
Right. I mean, obviously the schedule turns in November. They're going to have teams they can compete with. They could win 4 or 5 more games. You end up with an 8-win season. I know for some segment of the fan base that'll never be good enough, but certainly the opportunity is there.
Absolutely, and you use that word compete. The Mountaineers have competed even in the losses. Oklahoma game, they're within 3 points in the third quarter against Oklahoma State. The game goes to overtime. And even against Baylor, that was a game in the first half. They were trading touchdowns. So the team has not been outgunned to the extent that I think some of the fan base thinks they have been.
Right. I know Skylar Howard, the quarterback, a lot of people were piling on him after the Oklahoma and
myself included
losses. But, he comes back against a very solid Baylor defense, and I think most people thought he acquitted himself quite nicely.
Yeah, Coach Holgorsen at his press conference on Tuesday said that, the team actually stayed in Fort Worth ahead of that Baylor game, and that's Howard's hometown. He was able to go see some family and some friends, as Holgorsen put it. Some people who patted him on the back told him they loved him, and that did pretty good for him. He threw 4 touchdowns. He threw an interception for the 4th straight game, but he did have a bounce back effort. Those problems in terms of turnovers, in terms of high passes, they were minimized somewhat compared to what he had done in losses to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. So for Howard to put up those kind of numbers, even in a losing effort, it does give him a little boost of confidence.
I think having some time off now before that TCU game that you mentioned with people like Wendell Smallwood, who's been struggling with a high ankle sprain, Terrell Chestnut of the defensive backfield has had some injury problems. What is this going to mean for them?
You hear people talk about Wendell Smallwood. Why isn't Wendell Smallwood in the game more? He's the most effective back, and Coach Holgorsen addressed that today. He said, we're using Smallwood as much as we possibly can. But what people don't realize is that he hasn't practiced once over the past 2 weeks because of a high ankle sprain on his left ankle. And you saw even on that 55-yard run up the middle he had against Baylor, he pulled away, but then he didn't have the long speed to keep that up because of his gimpy ankle. So Smallwood is going to benefit greatly from the extra days ahead of the TCU game, as well as Terrell Chestnut. You're going up against that Baylor offense. The last thing you want to see is one of your starting corners on the ground grasping a shoulder that's been a thorn in his side for quite some time. Terrell Chestnut is day-to-day. Also, Tyler Orlowski, the starting center, is day-to-day, as is Yanni Kajusi, the team's starting left tackle. So all of those guys figure to play against the Horned Frogs, but they are going to need this time off.
We'll see how it all plays out as they prepare for TCU. Joey, thank you for your time. Please continue to follow our WVU football coverage of thedpost.com.